Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar. Run for the latest UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as we are once again in the midst of another heat wave as we do come to the end of June and start of July. Temperatures today are finally breaching those heat wave thresholds once again, up towards the 30-degree mark. We had a brief cool down during the working week. For most, it was still above average, but just not quite that heat wave level after, of course, last weekend was very hot as well. Temperatures are set up towards 30 degrees through Saturday afternoon. Will probably be similar through Sunday, maybe a little bit cooler in some western areas, a few showers and a bit of cloud. But then into Monday, that's where the temperatures could peak around 33 or 34 degrees across much of England and Wales. We thought it could get slightly higher than that, but the upper air temperatures have backed off ever so slightly, meaning the 36, 37 degrees that was rumoured a couple of days ago, that has now kind of disappeared without the model output. But still, 34 degrees, very oppressive. Into Tuesday, still could be very hot in the east and the south. Again, 33, 34 degrees. But that area of intense heat is reducing. And by Wednesday, it will be back down towards the mid-20s. Still hot in places, but not quite as ridiculously hot. The big thing that we'll notice over the next few days are the overnight temperatures. My gosh, it looks hot in quite a few areas, combined with the very long days and the intense heat. Might have multiple tropical nights coming for many in central England. So yeah, those nights are going to be pretty horrible sleeping conditions. As we progress into early July, though, as we'll see from the longer range charts, there is the risk of quite a big thundery breakdown later on this upcoming working week as that hot air gets finally flushed away. But it all depends on how much instability do we see. The GFS today has a lot of instability and would have quite a major thunderstorm outbreak. Other runs less so, and generally speaking, for the first sort of week or two of July, it does look warm, above average, but at the moment, no huge signs of any big heat spike. So at least a little bit more tame conditions there as we do progress into generally the hottest month of the year. So do remember, if you enjoy the videos, make sure you like and subscribe. Now, if you start on the live radar, you see mostly dry during this afternoon. I'm recording this just before 3 p.m. And you can see there are a few showers up towards the Scottish borders, up towards the Lake District. But generally speaking, it is a relatively dry day. Temperatures are already rising pretty high today, and you can see it is those hottest spots in central, eastern and southern England, closest to the intense heat across Europe. Look at that across Spain and France. Ridiculous heat dome developing here, even across much of Italy, and of course extending into North Africa. Extreme heat up towards the upper 30s, if not 40 degrees towards this weekend and Monday. So although yes, it's going to be very hot in the UK, we are actually on the peripheries of this heat wave. Of course, being as far north as we always are on the peripheries of these heat wave. But when we are looking at those temperatures, thinking how oppressive it is, it's a good few degrees hotter a couple hundred miles to our south. Further north and westwards, it is going to be very warm this weekend. Not going to see the intense heat that much of England and Wales is going to see, but still much better than it has been this week so far. Now, if you look at max temperatures, already this afternoon we've seen 28 to 30 degrees, pretty much in line with expectations. 3 or 4 p.m, once those observations come through, it could get up towards 31 degrees, but not expecting it to climb much higher than what we're seeing already. So around 30 degrees today, exceeding heatwave thresholds in the majority of areas, and it is going to stay like that through Sunday before climbing even further through Monday. Now, if you have a look at the latest UKV, you see bits and bobs of rain around early this morning, some cloud, but that disintegrating away. And as we do head into Sunday, it's a similar pattern with lots of sunshine, a bit more in the way of thicker cloud, but again, generally not too bad. As we progress through Sunday into Monday, yet again, look at that. Lots of sunshine for southern and eastern areas, really hot conditions there. Some heavy showers and some storms further north and some persistent rain as we are on the peripheries of that heat for Scotland and Northern Ireland, unfortunately. But that clears through, and eventually we cool down a little bit through Tuesday and through Wednesday, but it all depends on how much cloud and how much shower activity we see And then it's through Thursday, there is the risk of seeing some big thunderstorms breaking out, but we are right on the edge of that becoming a possibility here on this latest UKV. Of course, only goes out to 120 hours, and that's the point at which potential instability starts to move in. So by tomorrow's video, we should have a much better idea on Thursday into Friday. It could be quite a lot of storms breaking out, but of course, we'll update that tomorrow. If you look at the upper air temperature, you can see they are warm already today, but low to mid-teens, so up towards the 30-degree range, but not much higher than that. Into Sunday, the heat does remain across much of England and Wales, but you can see there's a small little dip there with a slightly fresher air mass moving in for a time. That's why you don't see those temperatures escalate too much through tomorrow. But it's into Monday. Look at those upper air temperatures up towards the 15 to 18, maybe even 19 or 20 degree mark. Very hot, up towards the low 30s for many. Still stays very hot into Tuesday, but you see it's really only across the far southeast. Look at that 20 or 21 degree range. That is intense. And if that had moved in, wouldn't be surprised if we were threatening the upper 30s. But in this case, that exceptionally hot air does just miss us. As I said, we are on the peripheries of this big heat dome. And then you can see into Wednesday and Thursday, it does slowly get pushed away with much fresher air coming in off the Atlantic. Now, if you look at the max temperatures, you can see this afternoon up towards that 28 to 30 degree range, pretty much in line with expectations, what we're seeing at the moment. As we progress into Sunday, it's a similar story up towards the upper 20s, again 27 to 30 degrees, maybe not as quite widespread 30s. Again, we'll have to see with the cloud and that, of course, that slight little dip in the air mass there. But it's into Monday where things could get very oppressive. Look at those temperatures by the afternoon, widely 32 to 35 degrees. Ridiculous heat for pretty much all of England and much of Wales. Not quite as hot across Scotland, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, but nonetheless still getting towards the 20 or low 20s there. So still very pleasant there for the final day of June. But look at the overnight temperatures. In central London, might not get much below 23 degrees. That is very oppressive indeed. Of course, after a very hot day inside many people's properties, not going to dip below probably 25, 26, 27 degrees. That is very difficult sleeping conditions. Not much respite on Tuesday, for being honest. Look at that. Again, low 30s, but a smaller quadrant there in southeast England. Slowly into Wednesday, the warmth gets pushed away. Still could see 27 or 28 for the temperatures overnight. Into Thursday, start to dip away more towards the mid-teens there in those hottest spots. So yes, freshening up there, but at least between kind of Sunday through to Wednesday, it's going to be very, very difficult sleeping conditions. Now, if you have a look at the long-range charts now, you see the latest GFS, that big heat dome developing across much of Europe at the moment. Intense heat there for Spain, Portugal, France and Italy. You see we are just on the edge of that big heat dome. If you put on the temperature deviations, you can see all of this heat. We're just on the far northern tip there, and it does remain intensely hot even through Wednesday and Thursday before slowly moving away. But interestingly, from the GFS here at day 5, look at this system developing. This is that low pressure system coming in from the southwest, and this would try to build some intense thunderstorms there through Thursday into Friday. So that's just on the edge of that UKV run. So again, I think we'll be very have real intrigue in what that shows tomorrow. And you can see the Cape does spike as well for a time there through Thursday afternoon. Beyond that, as we progress further into July, we go into more of a westerly flow, so still fresh, but pleasant in most areas. And out towards 384 hours, again, a mix between high pressure, low pressure. So at the moment, no huge signal for another big spike in heat, but nonetheless, still looking very pleasant there as we do head towards the middle of the month. If you look at the latest GM, again, westerly flow looking very hot and dry, and then again potentially a bit of a breakdown there into Wednesday, Thursday, but no low pressure system developing. So real contrast even at day 5, day 6. GFS, quite an intense low pressure developing, so it could produce quite active and organised storms. Here, more just an area of instability, so more scattered showers, storms, a bit unorganised, maybe not seeing much at all with a slow breakdown to something cooler. And then out towards day 10, again a westerly flow, so still pleasant, but lots more in the way of fresher air mixing in, so less likely to be too oppressive. And finally, if you compare it to the latest ECMWF, again, very hot during this week. Again, potentially a slight breakdown there Thursday into Friday. And then again, that westerly flow continuing there out towards the end of the run. But the high pressure migrating westwards out into the middle of the Atlantic. So instead of a southwesterly being encouraged, it's more of a west to northwesterly. And you can see for much of northern and western Europe, it's still pleasant, it's still warm, but it's not anything too hot. A lot more in the way of fresher air mixing in, so it's going to be a bit more breezy, more showers around, and just generally not particularly hot. But arguably, in my opinion, this sort of conditions is better. I wouldn't mind a bit of a breeze. I wouldn't mind temperatures not getting much above 25, 26 degrees. That's not too bad in my opinion. But of course, we'll have to wait and see if that comes to fruition. See, it's backed up by the ensembles here. Very hot over the next 5 or 6 days. Uncertainty, though, through that Wednesday to Friday period. A lot of precipitation picking up and very uncertain upper air temperatures. All is about how that low pressure system breaks down. Beyond that, as we head towards the early to middle portion of July, more around average for those upper air temperatures, some heat spikes appearing there, but generally speaking, a little bit more in the way of precipitation and a little bit more towards average. So perhaps a bit more of a mixed middle period of July there. But of course, we'll have to keep a close eye on that as well. And finally, if you compare to the ECMWF, again, big intense heat throughout the next 5 days or so, potentially even touching the 20 hours firm there in London for a drop-off and combined with intense precipitation before eventually we get back towards average with a bit more of a mix. So again, very interesting next few days coming. Lots of heat, oppressive conditions for many Monday, Tuesday, and maybe into Wednesday, and even the next 2 days, even though, yes, not getting into the low 30s, still very hot, before we could see a big thundery breakdown Wednesday through to Thursday, and then perhaps more of a mixed early to middle portion of July. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.